we should be going. In theory. Hello, I hope you guys can see me. Welcome to another live stream. I know, another live stream. I haven't been this consistent with live streams in a while, but I thought I would try something a little bit different. And this idea came to me, I think, from a tweet. I don't remember who it was from, but if you were the guy who suggested this to me, then shout outs to you, because I haven't stopped thinking about it ever since. Basically, you guys listen to me yammer on about any given episode that comes out, naturally. I guess that's how YouTube works. You want to hear me talk about these episodes. But I thought, I want to hear some of your guys' opinions, because while I try and read as many of the comments as I can, I don't always get to read all of your guys' opinions on any episode that happens to come by. So the purpose for this stream is just, I am going to lay the floor out to you guys, and I'm going to take in some of your own takes, as well as, of course, give you some of my takes on the latest episode of Lucky Day, as well as any of the other recent episodes of the series, and just how you're feeling about the series at the moment. Anything like that, pop it in the chat. We can have a little discussion about it. That's basically the purpose of this. I basically want it to be kind of an interactive thing for the community, and I want to kind of gauge what the responses to any given episode are week to week to week. And of course, I probably should have started this at week 1 if that was the case, but I only had the thought at week 4. But if you guys have any opinions on either Lucky Day or any of the previous episodes, feel free to drop them in chat. And I will read as many of them as I can get around to. Of course, super chats will guarantee your message be read, purely because the chat might be going quickly, so I can't read all of them, but I will try and read as many of them as I can, while also trying to make this an entertaining stream to watch as well. So I hope that sounds like a good idea. Hello, glad to be here for once. Hello, I can never usually make it. Well, you're here now. Hello, everyone. Hi, greetings from Argentina. I love that new theme at the end of the episode. And Mrs. Flood's theme, maybe. Apparently, I think it was... Oh, it was an old nursery rhyme song. Someone pointed it out, and I can't remember what song it was. Hello, Atomize. How you doing? Hello. I've just got back from Italy and have 2,000 words to write for Tuesday. There we go. Well, you can write some words about this episode. Give me your thoughts. Is Lux better than Lucky Day? That's hard. That is honestly hard, because here's the thing. For me, and I can only speak personally, I prefer the premise of Lucky Day, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I prefer the premise of Lux, but I think Lucky Day is a tighter piece of writing. Does that make any sense? I think Lux is a fantastic premise, and it's a really unique one for the show, and that feels really like a new era episode. Whereas Lucky Day doesn't feel as new to me, but it does feel like a very tight 45 minutes of the season. JMJH says this season has been the best in about 10 years so far. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think for me, this is probably the best since series 10 so far, personally. Oh, thank you to Hen Bees for the £2. Hi, really happy you did this. I commented on X. Well, there you go. I'm doing it. I saw your suggestion and I went, that's a good idea. So I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts. I'm not in the pub. Good to know, Paul. You can come and have a chat with us, Paul. Pour out a pint if you want. But I'm glad you did give me the idea. Ruby's dad is in 100% important, by the way. I didn't think of that. They could do something. Could the dad be the third member of the Unholy Trinity that was in the Radio Times? Wendy Evans says, hi, I have loved this series so much. It's hard to put one before the other, as each has a different feel, even though it's following an arc. I agree with that. It is hard to rank series of Doctor Who because they're all so different. And it's hard with series like this because oftentimes the series can be, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like with season 2, for example, there's only like 8 episodes. So it almost feels kind of unfair to compare a series with 8 episodes to one with like 13 or 14. Do you know what I mean? Lucky Day and 73 Yards are strikingly similar in that both are centered around Ruby and have strong links to the finale. Very true, very true. I'm going to ask this question. Do we think the symmetry between season 1 and 2 is an intentional plot narrative beat, or do we think that it is just them kind of reusing stuff? Because I think that that's deliberate. I think that these are meant to combine with each other. Story in the Engine looks very intriguing. Yes, I agree. Atomize says, Lucky Day was very good. Comrade was a great character. Loved Ruby's PTSD. The political messaging was interesting. I kind of liked Unit as a climate change COVID denial metaphor. This is another thing I want to discuss with you guys, and there's a reason why I started this discussion on this episode, beyond the fact that I was only given the idea by Henbees just now. I wanted to talk about kind of what we took from this episode, because I've seen a bunch of like different readings that I found interesting, and I wanted to tell you guys my reading, kind of give you my thoughts on it. If you will humour me, let me get it up. Where is it? Sorry, I tweet too much. I really should get off that app, really. But it's my only like other social media that I've been fairly active on since long before Elon or any of that. But where was it? Oh yeah, it was just after this. Sorry if I miss any chat. I will scroll back up when I've sorted this. I think it was... Why am I struggling so much? Ah, here we go. I'll read you what I thought. Because this was my thoughts kind of lying in bed at around 1 a.m. thinking about the episode of Doctor Who that just happened. Okay, so here's my rumination on the politics of Lucky Day. I've seen it framed as a always trust the establishment story, i.e. Unit as a military force, i.e. the establishment, and I personally don't think it is that. I think it's much more a story that says, don't let your skepticism of institutions lead you down rabbit holes. On some level, we all distrust large entities, and I think that's good. Even in the episode, Unit aren't equivocal in their goodness, because we see, Kate Stewart kind of pushing that moral line, over the edge, and she's being called out by, like, Colonel Ibrahim and Ruth Manley, who's Shirley Ann Bingham, and all of that stuff, which I think is all great. But beware of the people who exploit that distrust to pave the way for things that are worse. Fear is a hell of a drug. You'll notice how major far-right or, extremist politicians will market themselves as anti-establishment because it's popular, when in reality they are the establishment. Conrad doesn't want change for the better, he wants to burn it down, and when it's rebuilt, he wants to rebuild it with himself on top. He was rejected by the establishment, so he wants to replace it with a new establishment, and essentially his establishment. I apologise if that was a bit wordy and probably a bit heavy for 9:41 in the evening for a Thary's live stream, but that was kind of what I took away from the episode. But I'm fascinated to know what you guys took away, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to read some of your guys' thoughts. Doctor Who Mania comes in with a €2.49 super chat. They used music from Robot for the Comrade twist. Did they? Did they actually? Because I know that Think Tank was in the Fourth Doctor era. They were the ones who built the robot in Robot. So it's implied that it's the same organisation. In fact, one of the ideas I have for an upcoming video is to do a bit of a history on Think Tank, because that'd be quite fun. They used Think Tanks, did they? Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I hadn't noticed that. Honestly, every episode since Joy to the World has been solid. Yeah, I mean, it's weird with me. I kind of think Joy to the World is a little bit like it's fine. I didn't think hugely of it. But I agree. I mean, I don't think this series, I'm going to say it, I don't think it's had a bad episode. I think the worst it's gotten is Robot Revolution, and I think the worst thing you can say about Robot Revolution is that it's just kind of okay, you know? Loved that it was Conrad who told the Doctor about Belinda. Yes, that's another thing I want to talk about with this series, and why I think so far it's felt... why so far I feel like it's felt better than last series. And it's a basic thing, but it's a very important thing. This series, I think, does so much better with its setup and payoff. So, in this series, you know, it sets up things early on that are paid off later, which is a very small thing, and every show should do that. But I didn't feel like that was always the case with Season 1. I'll give you an example. Ruby's mum in that episode, in Legend Ruby Sunday, why is she pointing at a sign? Why is she pointing? Oh, she's pointing to a sign that we never see on screen. That's not a satisfying payoff because as an audience, we didn't see that. Do you know what I mean? It's not a satisfying journey for us to go on because we didn't see any of that. Whereas with a lot of what Season 2 is doing, for example, you know, having the Doctor meet Belinda and know who Belinda is, and be like, I can't go into the details because of timelines, only for it then to be revealed that the villain of the series is the one who told him, is a really, really good setup and payoff. Why was it snowing around here? That still confuses me, I'm not going to lie. As someone who liked Season 1 more than most, even I have to admit that still kind of confuses me. No, Thari, stream thumbnail streak is over, I know. I never know what to thumbnail my streams with, because I always focus more on the thumbnails for video, because I always think, well, they're going to actually get, you know, found in the algorithm, whereas live streams, once they're no longer live, they basically, you know, stop being found in the algorithm. This series feels very serialized, like Flux. All the episodes have a link at the start and at the end. Honestly, the story arc feels better so far. I very much agree. Guy Rogan says, why was the writing for Season 1 so spewy? It's interesting, isn't it? Because I do think that Season 1 has a lot of good stuff. You know, Boom, 73 Hours, Dot and Bubble. Like, those three are really good. I think it's just the opening and the end that really kind of lets it down. I think maybe there's a couple of theories I have. One is maybe Russell and co were just a bit out of practice, which is possible. I mean, the 60th felt pretty much like it always did, but I think it's easier then because it's all the same characters and general tone, whereas Season 1 was going for a new tone. Whereas with Season 2, you know, they'd already kind of done the groundwork there, so they were much more comfortable, if that makes any sense. I also wonder if maybe... what was the other point I was going to make? Like, maybe the budget kind of made things a bit different in the sense of they weren't used to working with that level of money in prior seasons, so they kind of let the ambition scale up faster than, like, how they would actually achieve it. Does that make any sense? And then, like, obviously with Season 2, they had a much better idea of, okay, this works, this doesn't work. I mean, this could all be for nothing, you know, once the finale happens, to be fair. This episode was great. Keenan says, hi there, he's big fan. Hello. Cybus Industries employee. When's Joe posting the new podcast? Well, I can tell you that we're recording it tomorrow. So if he pulls an all-nighter like he did last time, which I do not envy because we were sat there for a while, probably Wednesday or Thursday. One would assume, I think. But you'll have to ask him. I think that's probably roughly about right. Season 2, some of the worst writing since Season 1. Truly some of the worst writing in Doctor Who history. I can't tell whether that's like a joke at the fact that Season 2 has the worst writing since Season 1, in the sense of like, you know, every series is always like bad. I don't know whether that's a joke or not. Because the thing is, I think you're joking, but it's genuinely hard to tell. I did not get a notification about this. Like, well, that's a shame. I don't know what YouTube's doing. Thank you, TARDIS Centre, for the £5 super chat. Says, do you think that Mrs. Flood is the Rani and had a deal with the trickster? I think that she could be the Rani. I think that's a very strong possibility. Having a deal with the trickster would be very cool. I've wanted the trickster to come back for a very long time. I've always thought he was cool. And I do think that... Okay, if we assume that, obviously, you know, in this episode, Conrad says, I deny your reality, which is a fun little reference to, I think it's the Invisible Enemy in the Fourth Doctor era. And we know that the finale is called The Reality War. What if the finale takes place in kind of his version of reality, and in order to make that reality happen, he makes a deal with either Mrs. Flood or the trickster, and maybe Mrs. Flood is a harbinger for the trickster, or as you say, the Rani potentially. I'm not really sure whether Rani would factor into that, but I like it as a theory. Yes, Deadly Assassin. Sorry, I don't know why I said Invisible Enemy. My head went funny. To be fair, it's because it's late. What did you think of the Shriek as a monster? I quite liked the electricity, flares, and prey marking. Yes, no, I really liked the Shriek as a monster and as a monster design. I said this in my review, but it bears repeating again. I absolutely adored what they did with the think tank people having the kind of physical, like, prosthetics that look more like physical props, and then the real Shriek, quote unquote, are more like CGI and more kind of blended in. I think that's just a really cool little detail. Does Mrs. Flood's name being the governor actually mean anything? Well, I have a video that I'm planning on tomorrow for that. Thank you, Jesus, for Love and Monsters 2. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I do see what people say when they say that, and I get that it's, to a certain extent, it is like a joke. I do also kind of think, like, whilst there is like a similar base premise, they fundamentally do like very different things with the premise. I definitely think Conrad is designed to be like a fandom surrogate to a certain extent, and I find it interesting the connection that this era has to its audience. You know, obviously with this episode, Conrad is definitely, you know, he's a podcaster who's like into Doctor Who. You know, I mean, come on. And then obviously you've got the literal fans in Lux as well showing up, and obviously I think there was something last series as well that I seem to remember being a bit of like a direct nod to the fans. I can't remember what, but it's just really interesting. This era does seem very kind of aware of its audience, if that makes any sense. Full transparency, there are similar plot beats and even some theming, but I think it's a totally different vibe. I agree. It's kind of like the like Torchwood version of Love and Monsters. I guess that's what's that one called? Is it Random Shoes? So maybe that's not a great example. But it's kind of like, I guess it's more like a Years and Years version of Love and Monsters, to use that. You missed my theory back there, did I? Sorry if I do miss a comment. It's not because I'm trying to miss one. It's just that I can't always get to them because the chat scrolls quite quickly. But if you super chat, it basically guarantees that I will. But I will try and get to all of them. Sean, I think I found yours. I think Mrs. Flood is an old rival to the Doctor, an incarnation of the Master. I mean, she knows about the TARDIS, and I think she could trigger the Doctor's regeneration for the finale. Do you agree? If Ncuti is regenerating, it's possible. My only thing with that is, if the regeneration was added in last minute, then I don't know whether she would trigger the regeneration, because obviously that would imply that it wasn't the plan, if that makes any sense. But possible. Did you see? Is that a spoiler? Or is that a theory? I don't know. I don't want to read it just in case, but I mean, I guess it's already in the chat, so I don't know. I want a Halloween special on Doctor Who 2025. I think that might be a bit wishful thinking. You know, I would love them to do more stuff for Halloween. I think that would be fun. I always thought the WoW would be be a very like, it feels very Halloween. Like it would look like it would be great if it aired on Halloween. I can't speak. Also, love you, Tharies, for carrying Doctor Who YouTube for years. I mean, I appreciate it, but there's plenty of great ones out there. There's plenty of us, but I very much appreciate the compliment. I think it's too soon to bring out the Master. I kind of agree. However, I don't think it's impossible, but I personally wouldn't. But like, I'm not going to completely rule it out as a possibility of something that could happen. Just because I know they love bringing back the Master. Was the Doctor looking for Belinda in Robot Revolution? That seems to be the implication, I think. Yeah. Comrade believes in them deep down, but profits off of lying to others. That's how I read it, yeah. Because if you look at the episode, he does believe it. Because throughout the episode, he's like, oh, you know, we're a team, like you and the Doctor, you and the Doctor, you and the Doctor. You know, I can be everything he was. And you could say, oh, well, that's when he was pretending to be Ruby's boyfriend, but that's not necessary for him to act as Ruby's boyfriend, right? So I think that he very much does believe the stuff, but as you say, is lying for profit. But also, I think there's a deep desire in him that he wants to be like the Doctor. So is this a readout comment to discuss their points type stream? Yeah, essentially. I mean, you know, I might bring out a couple of my own points as well. But yeah, it's just kind of a chill stream. I just fancied it. And I might make this a regular thing if you guys enjoy it. I miss the Daleks. True, I will be gutted. I will genuinely be gutted if Shooty leaves and we don't get a Dalek story with him. How would you feel about Matt Smith back? It depends entirely on the story, I think. Honestly, a little disappointed. Still loved it. In the new episode, that when Kate was releasing the Shriek, she didn't go, screw it, and release everything. Cabin in the Woods style. That'd be cool. I mean, I guess it would probably explode the budget, although it would have been really funny if, like, some of the old, less, like, polished Doctor Who monsters came out. He was like, come on, that's obviously fake. You know, I think Review of Death joked, like, what if a gel guard came out or something, which would have been funny. I saw Comrade as being like a horrible like, YouTube personality like Joe Rogan. Yeah, I definitely think that's what they're going for sure. I think there's a lot of layers to him. I think that's why he's interesting. He legit saw the alien and the TARDIS disappear, of course he knew. Exactly. But the thing is, what people actually believe and what they say they believe is often two different things. Maybe Conrad is an anti-hero. I don't think that's the direction they're going, because he's pretty firmly, you know, not a great guy in that episode. You know, he full-on betrays Ruby, you know, gets into a relationship to manipulate her for months, and then also, you know, says that, like, what's her name? Shirley Ann Bingham is, like, on benefits, and it's clearly horrible, so I don't think they're doing an anti-hero thing. I think that'd be a bit odd. But I respect it. I liked Tales of the TARDIS, but I didn't really watch the entire classic episodes they put in. Don't tell anyone, but me neither. Because I've seen all of them, so I just sort of skipped to the new bits. Yeah, that's probably a better example. Criv, UK, yeah, probably is a better example. I think Rogan kind of works as an example, but I do get what you're saying. What did you think of the last scene of the TARDIS? I loved it. Oh, that's a good question. I think that's one of my favourite Shooty Gatwa scenes he's had in the role. It felt very like, oh, yeah, I love it when the Doctor, like, kind of snaps, you know? And, like, when his friends are hurt, he will just, like, go off. And it was great to see Shooty do that. And he does it with flying colours. I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic scene. It's such a shame, because I think Shooty is... really, really shone this series. And the idea of him leaving at the end of this one, again, we don't know for sure, but the idea of that just makes me so sad. Because I really think he's getting to grips with it in a way that I really like. And it's funny, really, because, you know, all this talk of, and again, I don't want to, you know, drag the conversation too much into this direction, because I want this to be more about, you know, what your guys' thoughts are on the episodes, but, you know, with all this talk of, you know, Doctor Who maybe going away for a bit, I mean, essentially it would have to guarantee it's going to go away for a little bit, given, obviously we don't know when it's filming and stuff like that, so it's going to at least take a year. But I'd be so sad if this era doesn't, like, continue in the way that it is, because I finally got an era of Doctor Who I'm really connected with, or like this series I'm really connected with, and the idea that it could end after this would be so sad. Because, you know, you guys know me, I wasn't big on the 13th Doctor era, and I would just be so sad if an era that I finally was into went. I'd be so sad. But thank you to Di Bowie, I hope I'm saying that right, for the $4.99. If the Daleks were redesigned slightly, what colour scheme would you like to see? Me personally, I prefer to see the classic silver and blue. Yeah, that's a good choice. I mean, I've always loved the Imperial Dalek colour scheme. I've always loved the white and gold, but I've also always loved the sort of chrome, Peter Cushing sort of coloured Daleks. Not like the Paradigm in their original form, but like the Cushing sort of like retro future 60s kind of glowy, like sort of bright Daleks. I think that would be a really cool way of doing it. But I would love to see, pronounced Di. Okay, sorry about that. Di Bowie, there you go. I remembered for next time, there you go. See, it's always a learning curve whenever you hear a new name, and I always get them wrong. Darius, do you think Conrad will be a fan of Harold Saxon? Stay tuned is all I can say, because I got a video coming up with that. Darius has always been good at names. I have never been good at names. To be fair, I mean, the amount of iterations of Shooty's name I went through initially, and then he himself said that he's been pronouncing it wrong. I was like, I don't know what to say anymore. I'm trying my best. But I love Shooty, so it's, or in Shooty. I never know. I'm just bad at pronouncing things, I think. I try my best. I don't think it'll be cancelled, DWH. I just think that it'll be restructured and, like, probably BBC funded. It might take like a year off, but I don't think we're in a. I just don't think this is the same as like 1989. You know, I think there's different. I think it is different circumstances. Like the viewing figures, you're right. The viewing figures aren't high, but as I said earlier today in the viewing figures video, like nothing is getting great viewing figures. The highest last night was Britain's Got Talent with 3.7 million, which would have been seen as apocalyptic back, 10, 12 years ago. And nothing cracked 2 million on the BBC, so we've got to try and put it into context a little bit. Darius, when will you address the rumours that you are playing the 16th Doctor? I can officially confirm that yes, I am going to be succeeding Ncuti Gatwa in the role as the Doctor. No, I would be awful. Genuinely, I don't think I'd be good. I mean, I don't think I'd be good as showrunner either. I think a lot of Doctor Who fans think that they could be showrunner. I am fully aware that I would not be able to do that job. Above anything else, I just think... Sorry. Oh, my throat went dry. One sec. I'm going to take a sip of drink. What was I trying to say? The worst Doctor Who is better than most programming. True! Especially like British public TV. Some of the stuff they put on there. I mean, I've always hated Britain's Got Talent. I'll die on that hill. But maybe that's because they always scheduled it opposite Doctor Who. So I always missed Doctor Who because all my family wants to watch Britain's Got Talent. See, this is the problem that it creates. And this is why Doctor Who shouldn't be scheduled opposite Britain's Got Talent, in my opinion. But yeah. So, at Theory, so what did Conrad do with the vial of serum Ruby gave him? I think he refused to take it, right? So he must have just, like, taken it off her and just kept it. I wonder if that'll be the key to defeating him, actually. Where it's like, his defiance of not taking it, maybe they had, like, unleashed the shriek on him at the end or something. I think the reason Conrad's interesting is because he's like a normal guy, but I think that's why he's interesting. Like the fact that in that scene you have him squaring up to the Doctor, but like he's not phased at all, is great. Like he might be one of my favourite like villainous presences in a while because he's such a different idea, just a different take on the villain. And like I've seen some people saying like, oh, you know, maybe he should be the Master, and I kind of think, no, I think that would kind of ruin it, you know. I like that he's this new. Oh, it's a bit like it's a bit off. It's a bit different. Di says, crap Doctor Who is still better than no Doctor Who. I agree, but I don't even think this series has been crap. I think this series has been one of the best in years, to be honest. That's why I think I'd be all the more sad if it went away. Because that's what I mean, like, we're having these discussions about this episode, like, there's stuff to say, there's, like, subtext and richness and themes and, ooh. Cameron says, Tharies, I feel like last episode could have been done with being a two-part. I loved both the first and second parts, but they felt so separate. I wish we had more time to breathe. I mean, I feel like that about most New Who stories. I think I've just kind of accepted that, like, at 45 minutes, you could always have some more time for most episodes. However, I don't know whether I feel like they completely feel like separate entities. I do think they flow in. I mean, maybe the third act resolution comes by a bit quickly, but I wouldn't say that they feel completely separate to me. I actually think this is one of the better paced episodes of this era, I think. Best series in Series 10 so far, I agree. McTeague is the showrunner for War Between Land and Sea. Now, honestly, that's another thing I wanted to say. I'm a lot more excited now for War Between the Land and the Sea than I was prior to this. Because prior to this, to be honest, I looked at it and I was like, I don't know, I feel like that could be a bit boring, you know? Like, because I wasn't really into, like, current unit, but like, this doing this whole thing with, like, you know, a morally grey Kate pushing the line, I'm like, okay, I can see the vision now for the War Between the Land and the Sea, if that's what they do. You're a great Doctor Who influencer, Darius, the best. Oh, well, thank you. That's nice. The PTSD thing was pretty offensive. PTSD sufferers don't tend to announce they're suffering from PTSD. I mean, I don't know enough about it, but I don't feel like they're announcing it. I don't feel like Ruby was announcing it. She was saying it to someone who, at the time, you know, she saw as very close to her boyfriend, right? It's not like she stood up on the pub table and declared it to all of them, because I'd agree in that case. But she says it to her boyfriend, who at the time she's confiding in. So I don't know. Maybe it's a bit clunky in dialogue, but I don't think it's... I don't know, it didn't strike me as that odd, but, you know, I don't have PTSD, so I won't say any more than that on it. Conrad equals George Sheard. Reporter equals Ali from Who Culture. Time for a Tharies lookalike. Yeah, I mean, you know what? Maybe they just can't get someone handsome enough. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's what it is. Although I did find it funny because, you know, I did think it looked like Ellie from Who Culture, but she said no, it wasn't her. But yeah, Conrad does look a bit like George Sheard, and I saw him saying that. I saw him say, please stop saying that I look like him now, because, you know, he's a horrible bloke. Block to Flux says, why can't 50 people look like how he is in this episode? I mean, I kind of get what you're saying. I do like those moments of darkness and those moments of him really like laying down the law. Equally, I think the reason why it worked as well as it does is that he is a lighter incarnation most of the time. So when those moments of properly locking in appear, do you know what I mean? They hit harder. Does that make sense? It's kind of my argument with why I think if he cried a little bit less, and my issue isn't, oh, the Doctor shouldn't cry. My issue is, when he does cry, I want to feel the impact of it. And you do in a lot of cases, you know, for example, with the Midnight Entity and stuff. But I just think with the regularity, it loses some of its punch. This season proves to me we can have more serialized stories while keeping Doctor Who magic. This is where the future of the show is going. I agree. I think they've struck a good balance here of having ongoing stuff going on, whilst also having things feel like, episodic enough for it to still feel like Doctor Who. I think they've struck that balance. Theories, my mum is pretty convinced that Mrs. Flood is the Rani now. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the train I'm on, I think. I kind of wish that instead of War Between, they just made more Doctor Who-like specials. No matter how good the spin-off is, would just like to see more Who thoughts. I kind of get it, but I also think that maybe that might not be how the funding for it quite worked. Like, I would still imagine that even with specials, a lot of that would cost more than War Between will. Because you got to think War Between is all on Earth. It's all probably either on location or, in studio sets. I don't imagine the special effects will have been as taxing. There's no time travel, there's no TARDIS, there's no, stuff like that. It's probably a lot cheaper to make. So I don't know whether you can just say, because I thought this, I was like, I kind of wish that we just had more Doctor Who episodes instead of the spin-off, but I was like, maybe that's not quite how it would have worked. Do you know what I mean? Just in terms of the way they would have commissioned stuff, but I don't know. PG says, love how Kate snapped when the brig was insulted. It's the most character she's had outside of Big Finish. I genuinely believed she would let Conrad die. I agree. I think, because I've seen some people say that it was out of character for Kate, saying, she's gone insane and stuff like that. And it's like, that's not, again, how I read it. I read it as she'd been pushed to her extreme, following, let's face it, a guy's come in with a gun, shot one of her staff, and also, this guy has doxed all of her employees' addresses and hers, presumably, and details. So, yeah. Thank you to Pew Fatal for becoming a top chair member. Thank you very much appreciated. Won't lie, Kate was dope AF in this episode. I agree. As I said in my review, and I'll say it again here, I was never a massive Kate Stewart fan, but this episode made me a Kate Stewart fan. I was like, yes, I get it now. Funnily, I do think this episode was kind of what I wanted from RTD2, which is funny because it wasn't written by RTD. But the way that it handles the politics, it's not subtle, but it was very, years and years, I felt, in the way that it dealt with it. It was very, this feels real, this feels, dark, in a way that felt authentic and felt genuine. And again, as I said, it's not subtle, but not everything needs to be subtle. I mean, The Boys isn't subtle in its political, satire, but it's still great. You know what I mean? The Boys is still fantastic. So, yeah, I don't know. Now, I'm still convinced that Mrs. Flood is Susan's mother, pissed off at her dad for being an absent father and abandoning his granddaughter. I like that. Could work. Yeah. Ooh, didn't think about that. I mean, it would tie in with all the Susan and family stuff in last series. Tharies, I think this Mrs. Flood cameo was more interesting because she actually did something and we know why. Instead of showing up and saying something cryptic. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the Mrs. Flood cameos. I know for some people, I've heard people saying that they groan at the Mrs. Flood cameos or they're not that invested in Mrs. Flood. Maybe it's just because I like Anita Dobson. And maybe I just really love the energy she brings to it. But I'm always happy to see Mrs. Flood. I don't know. That's just where I'm at with her. I just think she's a fun presence. I do get it, though. I mean, I will say, I think Mrs. Flood is working better for me this year than Susan Triad worked for me last year, because at least with Mrs. Flood this year, we kind of know a bit about what she's going out to. We don't know the whole thing, but we know that, do you know what I mean? She's not to be trusted. Whereas with Susan Triad, she's just kind of there. In some episodes, she's barely even there. She'll be like a painting or something. We need Brian May and Doctor Who. Come on, Russell. I mean, can you imagine? Do a Queen episode. Look, we've had a Beatles episode. Have a Queen episode. That would be sick. Have the 15th Doctor meet Freddie Mercury. Imagine. It would be great. It would be so good. Mrs. Flood is clearly more than just another Time Lord. Nice reference. I liked that, Clarence. That was good. Imagine Carl Urban in Doctor Who. I've been saying that for years. I want Carl Urban in Doctor Who. How come Susan Twist wasn't at unit in this episode, or at least mentioned? Yeah, wasn't she meant to be in this series? Surely she'd be in this one, right? Am I crazy? Because I swear she was on the cast list for this series. Theories, is there any episodes that you'd love to see a sequel to, like The Wow, whilst to Midnight? Not necessarily, oh, this villain reappears, but a story you think has more to say. Ooh, that's a good question. I have to think. I mean, I always thought that Amy's Choice, not necessarily a direct sequel, but I think there's more that can be done with the Dream Lord for sure. It's kind of difficult because of the way that the Dream Lord exists. Because, you know, he's kind of like space dust. And you can't just say, oh, a bunch of new space dust has just come onto the TARDIS. But I've always thought that, like, they struck gold with that concept. And I was always annoyed at the end where you see Toby Jones's face in the TARDIS console laughing at the Doctor at the end. And I always thought as a kid that was setting up for a sequel that never came. So for me, that one. So Robin as well says a Flatline sequel. That would also be another fantastic choice as well. So those would be my two. The Well's a funny one because in theory, like, a sequel to Midnight doesn't work. Or shouldn't work, I should say. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Midnight, just because Midnight is like a 10 out of 10, like, perfect script. And, like, I think that episode is like an 8 out of 10. But it's still not a bad episode. It's just that Midnight is so good that I don't think anything could quite, you know what I mean? Like, anything could quite reach the level. Sequel to Molecular Express, we still don't know who set that all up. True. Yeah, because it set up back in the Smith era, right? And then Capaldi goes and does it. The Time Shadow says, Theories, I think Moffat ruined the Time War narrative by bringing Gallifrey back. Do you agree? I don't know. I think on some level, it was the natural culmination of where you would take the 50th. Like, I think it's kind of an inevitable step that you would take. I think my issue is less that he brought it back and more that it being back ultimately meant very little. Yeah, I actually didn't mean to have the theme then. I was just thinking out loud. That's what I mean. In my head, when I'm thinking, it's just the Doctor Who theme. That's all that goes on up there. It's like, you know, the monkey with the what's the thing called? Like I don't know what the thing that you smash together are called. I'm gonna find out. But it's that. Instead of that, it's just the Doctor Who theme. I think we have a trilogy to Midnight. I mean, I have seen the theory that the Not Things are like an evolution of the Midnight entity, which I do like as a theory, because I do think that they have a very similar vibe. Symbols, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I personally wouldn't have destroyed Gallifrey again, in hindsight. It's funny, because people blame Russell for making the Doctor the last of the Time Lords again. It's like, technically, it's not him. Like, you know, I mean, to be fair, Russell does definitely emphasise it. But my theory is the reason that the Doctor's currently emphasising that is that it's about to be challenged, i.e. another Time Lord's going to come in. I like Moments of Darkness, but I truly miss character flaws of the Doctors. I want the Doctor to make mistakes and face up to them. I would agree a couple of years ago. I don't think that's the case with 15. Because in Robot Revolution, he tries to pull the charm on Belinda and basically just assumes, yeah, you're going to be my person now, just automatically without even thinking or, taking a second to think about what she might think about all this. And she kind of, puts him in his place for that. And it's like, no, you can't just, I'm not one of your adventures. You can't just, automatically think, yeah, we're best friends now. I do think this Doctor gets called out more. Maybe it would be nice to see it a little bit more, for sure. I think Ruby definitely gave him the pass on a lot of things. But I do see what you're saying. But I think it's getting better, if that makes any sense. Thanks, me and my friend are saying the Timeless Child would have been great if Twisted was the Master instead. He's been manipulated by more than even he realised by the Time Lords. Potentially, Lucky Day gave me proper RTD1 vibes, yes. I agree with that. It gave me very Torchwood vibes, I think. That's the vibe I got. Thary, do you think the painted hand that took the Toymaker's tooth will be the Master's? What, so you think the Master took his own souls from the tooth back? I don't know. I do have a little theory about that, again. I'm not actually... Yeah, I'm not sure, though, for 100%. Mrs. Flood is an anagram for old forms. Maybe she's the Doctor, like one of the Timeless Child ones. Could be. I mean, the obvious Mrs. Flood anagram I've seen is, when what does it do when it rains? It floods, rain, Rani. That's kind of the obvious one I've seen a lot of people going for. It was the wrong anagram. I'm trying to make sure I read as many comments as possible. How did Conrad rationalise that Ruby didn't age since 2007? Ruby wasn't aged in 2007. Ruby wasn't in 2007. Belinda was, and the Doctor was. But again, I think he believed completely what was going on the whole time. Because the thing is, it's implied that he went to go and work for UNIT before that second encounter with the Doctor, right? After the first one, but before the second one. So, you have to assume that if he was applying for UNIT, he'd have done at least some research into past alien incursions. And I mean, they even say it in the episode, that Ruby says, well, we all know aliens are real. But the way I like that, because I was saying this to a friend earlier, it always bothered me, and I mean, I get why they do it, because you want to have an alien invasion feel like a surprise. You don't want, anytime there's an alien invasion for people to be like, oh, well, oh, it's the Daleks again. Oh, get a new alien. But I actually prefer the idea that people know aliens exist. A lot of people just are deniers or basically believe it's a cover-up for something else. I actually think that that's much more believable and interesting than just let's wipe everyone's memory of it every couple of years. What year is it when the Doctor visits Conrad in prison? Good question. I mean, it's implied to be after season 1 but before season 2, right? So maybe late 2024, probably post season 1 but pre-Joy to the World. So somewhere between... Actually, it's implied to be June, July in season 1, right? So maybe anywhere between August and November, I suppose. Tharies, do you think the Daleks are coming back? Personally, I think the reality war sounds like it could, but I don't see that Wish World would have to do with them. I don't think they're in this series, and to be honest, I think if they were in an episode, I want it to be devoted to them. I'd want Ncuti to just get a straight-up Dalek story, if that makes any sense. But I do get it. The Daleks again, they've been invading every New Year's. Exactly. It wouldn't be as interesting. But then, I also think the idea of making it into a conspiracy is a fun way of sort of doing it. It's different, and I like it. What if Louise Miller is a trickster in disguise? What are the chances that no one would find her for 20 years? I mean, that's true. I always thought that with season 1. She's on the NHS, registry. Because she was, wasn't she, a nurse? No, sorry, I'm getting confused. She worked at the NHS, right? So she would definitely Like, there would definitely be records of it. I tell you what, Davina McCall needs sacking. That's some... They didn't try very hard. Series, doesn't this episode kind of retcon the Big Bang erasing people's memories? I mean, to be honest, they've been playing pretty fast and loose with what people remember and what people don't for some time. Because even post the Big Bang, you know, the Daleks were in Downing Street, like, a couple of years ago. And the Prime Minister was using them as, like, their personal, like, attack force. So they've kind of been a bit vague for the last few years about what people know and what people don't. And, like, do they remember the Flux? Do they remember that? Like, do they remember all the Sontarans just kind of invading Earth? Or was that all reversed? I honestly don't know. They've been playing a bit fast and loose with that for a while, but I think the implication is some people remember, but it's kind of a vague memory, which leads to kind of this conspiracy theory stuff. Does Wishworld air at 8 AM or do both parts air at 7 PM? As far as I know, Wishworld is the normal time. Reality Warp will be the 7 PM one, but the cinema release will have a double billing of both. So you can catch up on Lucky Day before you watch the Reality Warp. Doctor says she is Susan, 100% sure. Well, who am I to question you, Doctor, you know? Why are so many content creators taking a perversive glee in the low viewing figures? Because some people just want the show to be cancelled because they believe that it will be some kind of personal victory for them if it gets cancelled, either because they think that it'll be some vindication of their political ideology, or they just don't like this run and think it would be funny if it was cancelled. My thing is, I do cover the viewing figures, and I will say when the viewing figures are lower, but, like, I do think it's weird to take joy in, like, the idea of the show going off the air, especially because for half of these people who always talk about the viewing figures, what are they going to do when Doctor Who does inevitably, eventually, whether it's this year or in 10 years, get cancelled? Do you know what I mean? What's the game plan? I mean, to be honest, I often wonder what my game plan would be if the show gets cancelled. I think I'd still stick around, but I'd have to think of new ideas and new ways of keeping things fresh. But what would these people do? They'd probably just move on to the next thing and say, oh, Star Wars is going to get, sold back to George Lucas in T-minus, a month. And then, like, they just keep saying that for the next 10 years. And it'll never happen because he sold it. It's just, yeah. They'll just move on to the next thing. Because they don't actually... A lot of the people who just talk about the show going woke or whatever, they'll just move on to the next grift once this show, like, does end. We had Wilderness Years, no difference. Yeah, and to be honest, I don't see a scenario where the show goes on hiatus for as long. Bear in mind, like... it's getting a cinema release. Like, it's getting a cinema release and a Eurovision tie-in. We're not in the same place we were in 1989. Yeah, the viewing figures are lower. But, like, it still makes them a lot of money. And that wasn't the case in the 80s. Like, at least nowhere near to the extent that it is now. Russell should have never mentioned hiatus before the season gets released. Just makes it too bit sweet. I mean, to be fair, he doesn't say the word hiatus directly, but, he does kind of imply it. But, like, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's getting cancelled. I still am of the belief that maybe Disney won't recommit. I hope I'm wrong on that, and I hope they do. I just want the show to continue. That's where my head's at. For me, I'm really liking this new era. And I want it to continue because I think it's the best the show has been in a while. And I think if we can convince enough people to give it a chance, I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised. We can't live in denial. There's social commentary in almost every single scene at the moment. People aren't bringing it to Doctor Who. Doctor Who's bringing it to us 24/7. I mean, for one thing, that's always been the case for Doctor Who. It's always been there. Look back to 2005. Look back to the 70s with Jon Pertwee. You know, the Green Death was about, you know, climate change and the environment. We had stories about, you know, like the Sunmakers, which was about the evils of capitalism. And they literally talk about how taxes are sacrifices to tribal gods. You've got stories like, you know, there's that one scene, I can't remember which story it's in, where Jon Pertwee says, England for the English? Good heavens, man. There's, you know, the entire episode of Remembrance of the Daleks is based around segregation and, like, you know, like racism, and using the Daleks as an allegory for that. Like, it's always been there. Inferno is a story about, you know, literally Nazis. Like, they're literally alternate universe versions of the main cast as Nazis. Like, it's always been there. The only difference is, Del, I'll tell you what the difference is, right? Back then, people weren't paying attention. It's not Doctor Who that's changed. This is my opinion. It's not Doctor Who that's changed. It's the landscape around Doctor Who that's changed. It's not Doctor Who that's changed. It's all this noise, as the 15th Doctor says, about constantly talking about politics, talking about, like, the division of the world. It's the landscape Doctor Who exists in that's changed, not Doctor Who itself. That's my opinion on that. But there you go. Also, Happiness Patrol was literally Margaret Thatcher. Like, I don't think it was that subtle. A lot of the time, Classic Who was pretty, you know, obvious. Curse of Fenric has an entire scene where, you know, a man comes to terms with his faith and the fact that, you know, the English also committed bad things in World War II. You know, there's that scene where they're like, not German bombs, British. Like, it's always been there. Like, it's always been there. I hope you're right, Matrix Lord. I want that to be the case. I hope you're right. And if that is the case, I will be very happy and I will fully trust in that. I'm just unconvinced at the moment, but I want to be wrong, you know? That's where my head's at. It wasn't subtle, you were just 10. Yeah, I think that's honestly the thing. I think a lot of the time when people say, I miss when Doctor Who wasn't political, what they mean is, I miss when I couldn't pick up on political things. I miss when I didn't have to think about that stuff. And I think that's the difference, to be completely honest. And sorry if that's harsh, but what the fuck, your channel has 7.9 million views now. Yeah, I mean, I've done alright over the years, I guess. Yeah, yeah, it's alright. One day we'll get 10 million. That's the goal. Get to 10 million. Theories, I need your honest opinion, and you'll be able to speak to this more than anybody. Were you ever offended by Davros? My sister is wheelchair bound, loves Doctor Who, never the issue. No, I was never offended by Davros. However, it's less Davros himself, and it's more what they were going for with the change to him is less Davros himself. I've spoken about this at length, but Davros is a symptom of a wider systemic issue, right? In the past and historically, being disabled or, you know, disfigured or whatever you want to say was seen as kind of repulsive and weird and odd. And that was a big trope in fictional media. And Davros, much as I love the character, is a part of that. Now, for the record, I don't think, you know, I have very mixed opinions on it, because on the one hand, I think that I love Davros, and I love that character, and I wouldn't change him. I want to make that very clear. But on the other hand, I do get the point that he is part of that history of the disabled villain, which is a very common trope. It does exist, and it has for a very long time. So I don't think it's about offence, really. I think it's about acknowledging the reality of fiction, you know? Like the Phantom of the Opera and stuff like that. And, you know, all these characters who are evil either because of their disfigurement or are seen as repulsive because of it. That's what I think they're trying to acknowledge. I'm trying to have this as a genuine conversation because I do think there's interesting points to make that are so much more nuanced than a Twitter conversation will ever, let you have. We still have a spin-off. Disney is never going to. I expect the Daleks design by next season. Well, I hope you're right, because I would love that. I hope you're right. Darius will go from serious conversation to talk about leads. Yes, I will. That's what you come for. You come for the genuine conversations and also the leads. I don't even know where the leads thing came from. Davros uses casing from his own creation as a life support system. RTD has retconned 60 years of history. I mean, no, he hasn't, because he never, it's never said on screen that it's a wheelchair. Like, it's never said on screen or in text that it's a wheelchair. So it's not really a retcon. But in terms of what it represents in a real world context, that is essentially what it functions as. Yes, it does also work as his life support system, but also he's immobile out of it. We've seen that in Series 9. So for all intents and purposes, as much as we can obfuscate it with the sci-fi optics of it, it is functionally a wheelchair. That's not me saying that in the text it's referred to as one, because it's not. You are right, it's referred to as a life support system. But for all intents and purposes, same difference. I mean, Davros is right, I love the guy. But there is a genuine conversation. He's half Dalek more than anything. Yes, but I think his machine comes before the Daleks, though. His machine comes before the Daleks. Where do you think the Daleks got their design from? It's the chair. Did you notice all the attention about Blink lately? What, in terms of, like, fan stuff? I don't know. I mean, I saw people talking about it. Oh, yeah, Lux, yeah. You remember years ago on Twitter where Moffat said he would write a sequel to Blink, and RTD said, do it, and I will film it? Oh, that's a risky one, though, if they did do that. He was evil before he was in a wheelchair. Yeah, again, I'm not saying that, like, the wheelchair made him evil. I feel like that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the point I'm making is the disabled villain is a trope. That's the only point I'm making. And it's totally fair that you didn't see the life support system. I'm just saying that in an out-of-universe context, when an average person who's not into the show looks at that is what it looks like. I mean, for me, I just probably, would have done a different character for the Children in Need sketch, to be honest. But I kind of want to move on from the Davros stuff, because I've sort of made my opinions very clear on that in the post. On Instagram, Moffat said that the well past Blink, he said it was better. Yes, he said the well was better. Yeah, he did say that. Which I don't know whether I agree, but I respect it from him. I respect how supportive they are of each other. They did mention Blink and Lux, yeah. Thank you for the insight, my friend. No worries. The thing is, the only thing I'll say is it's a more nuanced conversation than I think, it's offensive or it's not offensive. I think there's more depth to it. And my feelings are very mixed. I love the character and I wouldn't change him. But I also sort of feel like I understand where that comes from. The idea that disabled people are used as villains hasn't come from nowhere. We didn't all just suddenly become woke in 2023 and just suddenly notice or suddenly acknowledge that. That's been a thing for a while. Do you think David Tennant will appear in Doctor Who again? I mean, look, if ever they ask him, he will definitely do it. He's a workhorse. He would do it. The Davros conversation is a dead horse that's been beaten so much, it's just a pile of ash now. Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I've said all I can really say on it. But, like, yeah, it's kind of funny how people still talk about it. Like, when in reality, it's not even really been in, you know, a thing. You know, it's not actually been in an episode. It's been in, like, a comic relief sketch. And even that is set, you know, pre the creation of the Daleks. So you can kind of assume that it's just pre his accident. Yeah, the timeline's a bit off, but, like, it's not actually even been in the show proper. If it was, then I would understand, you know, the conversations still being going on around it. But at the end of the day, it was just one decision for a Children in Need sketch, like, almost 3 years ago. Like, I don't know. Ultra17 says, this is a top 3 episode for me and I'm a classic fan. Good, I'm glad to hear it. He'll be doing this till he's 90. Exactly. I personally want the Unholy Trinity to be the 3 founders of Gallifrey. But someone like the Trickster or something completely new is more likely. Yeah. I mean, the Trickster would be very cool. I would love that. But I also don't mind if it's someone new. Was the Great Intelligence totally been? I don't really know, because last time we saw him, like, he goes into the Doctor's timeline, messes with stuff, and then, like, Clara goes in, fixes all the stuff, and then we don't see him after that. So I don't really know. Maybe he's still lingering in the Doctor's timeline somewhere. Potentially. Richard E. Grant. Maybe that's why Richard E. Grant's Doctor exists. I hope Pete doesn't become showrunner. The show needs fresh blood in charge, not just under the classic family. Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, like, obviously, I do think he's one of the more likely candidates for showrunner when Russell does eventually decide to step away. And when he does, and if McTeague is the successor chosen, I will, of course, you know, give him all the best and, you know, all the best of luck. But, I mean, I'd have to see how he handles War Between first. I miss Toby Whithouse, top quality writer. I agree! Darius, the Great Intelligence got addicted to TikToks. He's not watching them since. Oh, that's what he's been doing. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I don't know whether Whithouse wanted it, did he? I feel like he was offered it. Am I crazy? Wasn't he offered it? But he turned it down ultimately in the end? Maybe I'm wrong. Predicting it now next episode is going to be the first Mare 1 IDK, but that's my gut instinct. Ah, see, I'm really excited for that. I think it looks really unique and, like, different in a good way. The only one that I could see, the only one I really have concerns for at this point is the finale, and I think that's just because of my kind of trauma surrounding Empire of Death. And I mean, look, that guy, you know, I love Sutek, I love him to bits, and I didn't love, you know, how they did him in Empire. So that's my main concern, really. It's just don't mess up. You know, don't mess that up. I mean, I think that the stakes are lower with the Rani, to be frank, if Mrs. Flood is the Rani, which is kind of where I'm at. Because, like, let's be honest, neither of her stories in Classic Who have ever been that good. Whereas, like, with Sutek, you know, in my opinion, one of the best Classic Who villains of all time. And one of the best Doctor Who villains, period, of all time. Like, I love Sutek. So I think there was more... I think there's less to risk with, like, a Rani return. I love Mark and Rani personally. That's fair. I'm just saying that they're not, like, the critically beloved darling that, like, Pyramids of Mars is. Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't be a Theories video, that's Vampire Death Day. I mean, it's really funny because people always say that, oh, I'm a shill for Russell. I'm a shill for Russell. It's like, yeah, I prefer this era. I'm enjoying this era quite a bit. But also, I will always have a little bit of... I will always be a little bit sad that my boy got done in that way. You know, as much as I love Russell, there'll always be that little twinge in my eye being like, but you did do that with Sutek, though. So... Tales of the TARDIS McMahon 7. Yeah, I think that's another thing. I think even if the show goes off air for a year, which I think is fairly likely, I mean, you know, given that they've not filmed anything yet, or at least to our knowledge, I think something like a Tales of the TARDIS miniseries or something like that to fill the gap is pretty likely. At the end of the day, they're very cheap to make. Wonder if the Theories ramp will ever actually be used. I have thought this. I'm like, bro, they named a ramp after me. They've never shown it on screen. I want my TARDIS wiki entry, damn it. I don't know. Maybe one day. I mean, if Shirley doesn't get on that TARDIS, I will be sad. Because I love Shirley. Space Babies or Empire Death? Space Babies. Because Empire Death annoys me more. Space Babies is like... It's not great, and it's a bit cringe, but it's like ultimately inoffensive. It's just a bit of a crap opener. Empire of Death upsets me. Not upsets. That's probably a bit. Empire of Death annoys me more. Should we say that? Can we bring back Paul Cornell? Just one more episode with him, please. I don't think he wants to do it. I remember back when I was doing the original Theories podcast. Remember when I interviewed like Nick Briggs and all that sort of stuff? I remember emailing him. I mean, this is years ago, so I don't think, you know, I don't think he'd mind me mentioning it. He probably doesn't remember. Being like, hey, do you want to do the podcast? And he was kind of saying, look, I appreciate, you know, you emailing, but I'm kind of stepping away from Doctor Who stuff at the minute. I don't remember what this was. This was a couple of years ago. When this was, it's a couple of years ago. So I don't think he's too eager to go back into that world. But maybe I'm wrong, you know, maybe his mind's changed. I mean, to be fair, just a couple of years before he came back, Russell said he'd never do it again. So, you never really know. You never really know. Do you think 11th Hour is the best opener? I think so, yeah. At least for a Doctor. Yeah. Best modern opener. It's that and, if you want to do all of the show, it's that and Spearhead. Even Moffat said he would never return. Moffat said he would never return multiple times. And still did, so... Yeah, you can't trust any of them. Number one, the showrunner lies. Rule number one, the showrunner lies. Are you worried about this season's finale after last not being so good? Yeah, I was saying this earlier. That's my one concern for this series. Because now, we're 4 episodes deep. I think all 4 have been pretty solid. Like, I'm pretty... confident that like the next 2 will at least be decent. The finale is the one that worries me, because if it doesn't stick the landing, then I think, because the thing that happens as well with Doctor Who, right, is if the opener, or if a finale is bad, then it taints the entire rest of the series. Because I will say, up until the finale last year, people were a lot more positive about season 1 than they ultimately turned out to be. And I think a big part of that is because Empire of Death was what it was, and it disappointed so many people. So that does worry me. For sure. Sorry if it's been asked before, but how did you discover Doctor Who? It was the next Doctor, Christmas. My dad was very stereotypical in that he was I vaguely remember some guy with a scarf, maybe you'll like this. So it was Christmas, didn't know what to put on, shoved it on, and it became my entire personality. And I think he probably regrets it to this day. Did you hear that Joe Martin shows up in the upcoming episode? Yes, I did hear that rumour, and that would be very interesting. Surely if Disney stop commissioning it, they'll just make it standard BBC again. That's what I hope happens. RTD doesn't get what Doctor Who is, he sees it as a soap. I don't agree. I think he does have a more kind of like drama, like down to earth drama side of it. But I also think for the modern age, that's somewhat necessary. So I don't agree. I think it's just a different flavour of the show. You know? It's like, I feel like a lot of people, when, I don't know, like Patrick Troughton was his Doctor, was like, well, this is the Doctor at all. The Doctor's meant to be, you know, an old curmudgeon stick in the mud who, with a secret heart of gold. Who's this, you know, cowardly imp character? You know, this isn't Doctor Who. But I think it is just a different take on it. My first episode was the Satan Pit. I mean, that's a great first episode. I'd give us 13 episodes. I mean, I do miss that. But then again, part of me is like, I'm kind of glad I don't have to get up at like 8 a.m. for 13 weeks. At least, okay, if you bring back the 13 weeks thing, make it at normal time and you got to do... Robot Revolution felt like a season 1 episode. I mean, Robot Revolution is just kind of like a mid-season opener, which I think's fine. Like, season openers for me, other than like 11th Hour, which is, you know, kind of different because it's like a Doctor introduction, are never really, like, that great, in my opinion. Like, they're sometimes good, they're sometimes solid, they're sometimes fun, but very rarely is it the case that, like, a Doctor Who season opener is, like, breaking anyone's top 10s, other than, like I said, maybe, like, 11th Hour, and, like I said, Spearhead, if you want to go back to Classic Who. Like, they've always kind of been the sort of middling starter ones to kind of get us in the groove. Darius, I think my issue with RTD and RTD2 is that he seems to have the attitude of, oh, it's Doctor Who cares, which I hate because I care. I don't think that he doesn't care. I think to a certain extent, he potentially got a bit too overly confident with this era. But to be honest, part of me can't blame him for that because, you know, we spent years saying that, you know, he was the one who brought back Doctor Who, which he did. You know, and he brought it back and he made it a success. But I suppose when you've heard that for so long, you run the risk of, like, buying into your own hype a little bit, maybe. I don't think he doesn't care. I think he just... Maybe he, like, sort of thought to himself, you know, I got this. I know how to do Doctor Who. And in the process, kind of went a bit too far, maybe. But I do think he's gotten the balance much better this year, as I've said. I think, to be fair, Russell has never been... Russell's strength was never in, like, the sci-fi explanation stuff. That was always the case, even in his first era. You look at Season 3, what's going on with the Doctor becoming Space Jesus there? You know, and they all pray, and then he gets revived. It doesn't really make sense, but we all sort of go along with it, because the character stuff's good, you know what I mean? That's always kind of been true. The gods are his newest version of that, in a sense. A 1000% Moffat fits Disney much better. And I see what you're saying, because he does do a more fairy tale, like dark fairy tale, almost Tim Burton-y like vibe. I can kind of see what you're saying. But I also get why Disney would see the appeal of Russell, because he's always been a very, like, he's kind of what I would call, like, the populist showrunner. He knows how to get, like, the general public to be interested, or at least, like, you know, he definitely, you know, sort of is when the public is receptive to Doctor Who. I think the issue is that the public aren't really receptive to it at the moment. And Russell does character stuff and commentary very well. His sci-fi stuff can be a bit wonky sometimes, but he's a fantastic screenwriter overall. It's a Sin is a great work of art. I agree. I think Russell is a great writer. You know, and I think that kind of... I think both Russell and Steven are great writers. And even Chris, you know, I mean, Broadchurch is good. And, you know, I have my misgivings about Chris's era. Bullstrike thought it was bad because white man bad. Well, Kel Surprise, I am shocked that Bullstrike found a recent episode of Doctor Who bad. Colour me shocked. I'd be more surprised if he thought an episode was good. I mean, I love Years and Years as well. Cucumber's great. Like, he is a great writer. It's just, I think it's just with, like, I think with Doctor Who as well, to a certain extent, everyone just has their own tastes. And, like, for some people, some showrunners are going to just work better for you than others. Like, for me, I like Russell's, kind of, like, more character-focused stuff. Like, that's one of my issues with Season 1, is that it didn't feel particularly character-focused. But I feel like Season 2 has done a lot to kind of address that. But for some people, they might prefer, Moffat's more sort of high-concept stuff, which I can also totally appreciate, Yeah, that was a weird line, Vanders. That was a weird line. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that's the other thing with the showrunners we currently have. And I mean this with the greatest respect to all three. They're all getting on. I mean, maybe not so much Chris, but Stephen and Russell are getting on. There's going to be fumbles when it comes to political commentary and up-to-the-minute satire when you're, like, 60. Do you know what I mean? Like, and, like, it doesn't mean that it's not a dodgy line, but it's kind of like, yeah. Yeah, that was a bit like, yeah. I've always wanted your opinion on this. I think I've said this before, but thoughts on the male presented Time Lord line in the Starbase after both Rose, Donna, no, he's literally been a woman. Yeah, I think that's dumb. I think that's a dumb line. I think it's silly, because just because the Doctor's a man now doesn't erase his experiences as a woman one incarnation ago. I think that's dumb. I've always thought that was dumb. Yeah. It's funny with the Starbase, because I think, like, it starts out really great. Like, its first sort of half an hour is, like, perfect. It's the third act where it all sort of falls apart. It's the third act where, you've got the, like, binary, non-binary thing, which I think, I get what he's going for, but I think it muddles the theme of, Rose's trans identity and kind of conflating that with the meta crisis, which I think is just a bit muddled. And then, obviously you get the whole male presenting Time Lord thing, which I just don't really think works. And I think it just gives fuel to all the wrong people. The damaged roads thing, I mean, that doesn't really bother me. Like, yeah, it's an instant reversal thing, but again, that's a very Russell trope. I mean, look at Series 3 with the world being reversed a year after, the Master's plan. But yeah, no, I've always thought that was dumb. The Star Beast is one of those where I would definitely like. I think it's funny because in a way I would still say it's like really like I have a really great time with it, but it does have its issues. Wild Yonder I think is peak though, and I'm a giggle enjoyer, as you all know. I mean, it's not that she's. I mean, she's had the meta crisis energy in her the whole time, right? Isn't that the implication? That it's only that it's coming out now. I mean, I don't really think it's arrogance from her. I think it's just poor. I think it's just a poor line, really. There are some lines in this era that I think, yeah, they aren't great, but I think that sort of happens with, like, all of them. Like... Also, thank you, Wendy Evans, for the £2 super chat. Very much appreciated. Thing is, I don't think there's anything wrong with having, like, a message. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It all comes down to execution for me, and I think all pieces of art have a message or an agenda, if you will, which feels a lot more loaded of a term. But all pieces of art have something they want to say, something they want to convey to an audience. It just depends on the tact with which you deliver it, and sometimes I think Russell is great at that. I think, well, obviously I know that Lucky Day wasn't a Russell episode, but I think that's a good example. But then other times, I think it can be done poorly, like with some of the scenes in the Starbase, for example. Like, I don't think it's necessarily an issue of, having an agenda or having, like, a message, because everything does. It's just about how you do it. Justice for Conrad. I mean, yeah, you are called Daleks forever. You would say that. Did anyone name the other Cyberman head? No, I don't think they did. I think the idea was we were going to do what we did last time, where it would be like a contest of like a bidding contest to see who would come up with a name. But maybe I'll just take a random name. I'm not sure. Which message didn't make sense? Lucky Day? Was interesting. And he was treated horribly by his mum in the scene we saw. Yes, well, I've seen a lot of discourse surrounding that as well. And, I mean, I find it interesting because a lot of people say, like, oh, well, why would you make him sympathetic in that opening scene if we're supposed to view him as evil? And it's like, guys, a lot of people who turn out to be horrible have, really bad upbringings or have things happen to them in their past that lead them down that path. That's, we are all products of our environment, and we are all products of our own circumstances, and everything that happens to us in our lives influences who we become as people. So if anything, it feels more accurate to me to have, like, Comrade, kind of feel undervalued in his youth and then be rejected for a job, which leads him to basically wanting to tear it all down. That feels very, like, very accurate. I don't know whether I agree, because I think the opening scenes where like Donna and Sylvia are discussing like how she's like clumsy but she's trying, that to me felt very like true to life. That felt very realistic. I thought that was fine. It's just the sort of stuff in the last sort of third that doesn't work for me. But I think it's just if you are against a message that a show has, then no way that they do it will ever be good enough. Like, do you know what I mean? No way that they do it will ever work if you're not receptive to the message itself. And if you're not receptive to the message, then you're not, like, and that's whatever, but how doesn't Conrad believe in the TARDIS when he's seen the Doctor, not aged since 2007? I think he does believe in it, but he pretends like he doesn't for the money, right? He pretends like he doesn't for the grift on his podcast. At least that's how I read it. The adults are talking to the girl you were dating is on. Well, yeah, I mean, it is implied that he's a couple of years older than her, so I'm not surprised that he lords that over her. I guess, like, a lot of people like that would be like that. Not necessarily, though, because even if he wouldn't necessarily drink the drink if he believed it, though, because he still wants to appear like he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? So, like, the reason why he still says, oh, your special effects are improving in that scene in the ending where he's like being live streamed is because he still wants to keep up the narrative that it's all fake. But you can tell there's twinges and there's moments where he starts to doubt it. And I think he doubts it the whole time deep down. Even if he doesn't want to admit it to himself. Actors and visual effects, he said. Yeah. Ruby Sunday is a ridiculous name, though. I have to agree with him on that. That's true, but I thought that was funny, because we all said it at the time. I thought that was funny. Well, I mean, to be fair, with the whole Rachnos thing, Del, the Rachnos thing happened prior to the Big Bang in Series 5, so we can kind of count, Moffat for that one. As for the public not believing stuff that's happened right in front of them, I mean, you'd be surprised how many people don't believe real-world events happened in our reality. So it's totally plausible to me that people would believe it's some sort of cover-up or special effect or something, to be quite honest. I had someone, just randomly talk to me one day, I was in the middle of town, and they were just saying, they were just speaking to me for, the last, for about, 15 minutes, and I couldn't get away, just being, how they thought, 9/11 wasn't real, and, so it totally, I'm just saying, it totally tracks to me, that would be something people would think. You got to acknowledge people will believe mad stuff in our reality, so it stands to reason that would be the case in the Doctor Who reality as well. I think there was some sort of do you know those people who put they hold the cardboard signs of the end is near? It was one of them, but they they kind of knew that because I was in a wheelchair, I couldn't escape, so I just sort of had to sit there, and eventually someone else who I was with came up to me and we left. But you know what I mean? It does happen, Someone at my work randomly started doing Holocaust denial out of nowhere, so I can believe people are idiots. Exactly! The moon landings being fake. Exactly. People disbelieve their own eyes all the time. So to me, that reads as incredibly true, if a little bit depressing. Who refunded UNIT if it was disbanded? I've always wondered that. I have a little theory that they're going to delve into that in the War Between Land and Sea. I reckon they might do a little bit of a commentary on maybe sort of billionaires and stuff, and say a billionaire started bankrolling them, but that leads to him having kind of his own agenda. That's what I would do, but we'll see. Or Titanic not sinking. Exactly. Have a good night, bro. Keep the good content. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine, but being told to trust an organisation like UNIT is crazy. I don't think they're being told to trust an organisation like UNIT. I think it's more just don't let your natural skepticism of institutions lead you to something worse. We believe Mysterio. I mean, I never believe Mysterio. I'm always Team Spider-Man, bro. But yeah. UNIT have alien technology, they can rob any bank they want. They could, and that's what I would do, and that's why I don't work for UNIT. UNIT has been visibly defending the Earth for decades. How can they deny it? I mean, yeah, but again, people will deny all sorts of things. That's people are dumb. I don't know what to say. If people can deny, basic parts of history, do you know what I mean? I think, especially because UNIT do go out of their way to try and be a little bit secret. That doesn't strike me as much of a stretch. The shape of the Earth, exactly. Come on. If in this reality we're having people who think like that, I don't think it's a stretch that in the Doctor Who reality some people don't think aliens are real. I think that's all that UNIT is some kind of conspiracy. I think that fully lines up, especially when you factor in all the memory wipes that have been happening as a result of things like the Big Bang in Series 5. Some people have the giggle effect in their head 24/7, I swear. Very true. Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, you say that, Unmastered, the Dalek invasion, Cyberman invasion, Adipose. Even people like Donna's like, oh, I wasn't there that day, you know? So some people will either just not believe it or, you know, not take any notice or stuff like that. How many news things do you see that, like, feel like big deals but, like, are never spoken about? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much constantly going on in the world, too. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like if we found aliens, like, as a society, we found aliens, I fully believe that some people would be like, nah, it's not real. They would! Why are people just listing numbers? Yeah, but they've seen the aliens, we haven't actually seen the Earth. Not a flat earther just saying. I mean, yeah, but we've seen, like, you know, space satellites of Earth, you know? Do you like the new Murray Gold track, The Reality War? Yes, I do. On a scale of 1 to 10, how sure are you that Shooty will regenerate in Reality War? I'm higher than most of chat, unfortunately. I'm going to give it... I don't think it's 100%. I'll say a 7. I'm higher than most of chat, but I'm not 100%. Piss, there's no problems this year. I mean, yeah, to be fair, though, they're not normally every year. Even back in the Russell era, they were every other, so maybe 2026? I mean, it did sell out, didn't it, if memory serves. So, I wouldn't count it out that they'll do another one. What's the explanation about 14 living down the road tired with Donna not doing anything there? Are they ever going to address this? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's getting therapy. I mean, it is a bit weird that, like, you know, the universe just gets destroyed and he's just sort of chilling. I guess that is one of the pitfalls of it. But I feel like if you're to ask that question, you also have to ask, where are all the other heroes in any Spider-Man movie? Do you know what? That maybe not a great example because they always bloody show up in the Marvel ones. But like, okay, you know, why don't like the Avengers show up to help like the Thunderbolts? Do you know what I mean? I'm making a point because in a connected world, sometimes you have to accept that some people just aren't going to show up because they're not relevant to the story, you know? Like, is it possible that the BBC will sell the rights to Doctor Who? Nah, not for the foreseeable. It's too profitable for them. I think the BBC would have to properly go down before it got sold on. I think Doctor Who would get sold on in that event and probably would live on under someone else, but so long as the BBC exists, no. Have you seen Thunderbolts? I haven't yet, but I'm waiting because I got a cinema refund for one of my Doctor Who tickets because I decided to go to another cinema. So I'm going to use that to go see Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts trailer is saying that the Avengers are there. Yeah, my point is just, you know, you could ask in any of those movies, where's insert hero here? You know what I mean? I had a message then. What do you think of the Matt stuff so far? I think it's been mostly forgotten since Lux, especially when the Doctor said, who am I saying cut to? I think it might just be for Lux, but maybe it comes back. Maybe it does. I think I'm going to head off because it is late. But thank you all for this. And yes, I will be seeing not Empire of Death, the finale in cinemas. Yes, I'm going to The View in Cardiff. What's your verdict on Ruby collecting mums? I like it. It's sweet. But yeah, I'm going to head off because I've been streaming for almost an hour and 40 minutes. I was only going to do an hour. So there we go. Take care, everyone. And I'll see you soon. What time are you uploading tomorrow? Probably afternoon, I think. See you soon. Bye, everyone.